So I think that the book, the PowerPoint, does a pretty thorough job, but I wanted to highlight some of the actual theories that accompany social structures. So, was there anything from the reading that you found interesting? Let's start with that. It's not the juiciest of readings. It's not terribly juicy. Okay. So as social workers, we know that we don't just work with individuals. Are there any people in the class that are interested in macro work? Like anybody that is more interested community macro work a little bit? Okay, I see a hand.
Mhm.
Sarah, okay. Yeah. So even when you do individual work, you still work with systems. Um, you said no, thank you. Yeah, it's because I would say no thank you to therapy. So, that's why we are all important. Macro is scary. Yeah, I hear that a lot, especially when talking about the exam. I hear that a lot, for sure. Um, but it's definitely essential and it's going to look different depending on your setting, right? Typically all clinical or work when you are working with individuals has some side of macro, where you can get involved and advocate, especially around policy typically and the legislative sessions and things like that. There'll be a lot of opportunities to get involved that way. But it definitely is something that is definitely different than most of the clinical or clinically focused things that we definitely talk about a lot. Um, so we know that Linsky in the book described inequality in two ways. So I wanted to kind of review some of the theories that were in there. It was a lot of pages, but it was a lot of reading, and it has some really good things in there. But I wanted to specifically, since it's a theory class, pick out those theories of social inequality. So the conservative thesis says inequality is natural, or divinely ordained. Some people are meant to lead and others to follow. That's very interesting. Then you also have the radical antithesis that says that equality is the natural order, and inequality comes from abuse and power and privilege. And so I feel like when you look at social welfare, like the history of social welfare, you kind of see those two play out, right? You see that Protestant work ethic, like, if you don't work or do, then that's why you don't have, right? That's so it's kind of like um it's naturally going to happen that way, right? Um versus looking at it a more no, this is actually oppressive, intentional, abusive. This is not how this is not natural, right? So you have those kind of two sides to it. And I think as social workers, we definitely tend to fall on the this is not natural side. But I know that you will see that Protestant work ethic those values come out um, a lot in society and even in the systems that we work in. right? Um, some things we feel should be right. Why should we have to like fight for these things? These things should just be automatic, right? But we know that that's not really what happens. Yeah, blaming the individual instead of the government. Yeah, healthcare. Yep. Mm-hmm. Grew up with them Protestant work values. It's an adventure to unlearn. Yeah, and I think it's natural to say, because especially in child welfare, um, clients are receiving benefits. And so a lot of times the conversation looks at, well, when are they going to get off the benefits, right? Um, this is a generational thing, intergenerational. Um, why don't they have a job, right? You kind of hear all of those types of things, versus poverty and what are the causes of poverty, and how systems really contribute to that, um, should be more of that focus. How are we coaching people to adhere to white dominant culture? Hmm. Yeah. So I think it's really important to, because especially right now, the conversations that you are, I'm sure, immersed in are very hot. People are unfollowing and deleting people off of all social media just based upon their opinion, right? So I know even if you're not indulging in the conversation, because sometimes when you're a social worker, you're like, look, I social work all day long. I really don't want to talk about this with you. Or you might be like, I'm going to fight for what is right. And we about to go toe to toe on this thing because you wrong, kind of thing. So I tend to fall in the realm of watching reality TV because sometimes it's just so much. Like because we are always talking about social justice. We're always faced with how the system is hurting our clients. We're always trying to fight for our clients. Um, so you gotta have a little guilty pleasure. So that's my guilty pleasure. That was just a little confession. But we do have to remember that there are these two kind of conflicting sides and really make sure that we're keeping ourselves accountable about how we are feeling about these different systemic issues, making sure that because I feel like it's easy to say it and to know it, but then to like actually live like it could be different, right? Because I think we sometimes compartmentalize, and so we're like, well, this is my social work self. I know that that's the right way, but I also am like, you need to get off. Like, why are you still on it? Like, So we always have those kind of competing thoughts, but just realizing how social structures really impact human behavior, and also kind of how those social structures show up, especially when we talk about like values, how they show up. Northern cradle attitude. Yeah. So those are those two perspectives. Um, then we have Marx and Weber. So we know Karl Marx believed inequality and class conflict are inevitable under capitalism. Kind of that same falling under that same like, well, it's going to happen type of thing. Um, and then Weber agreed and inequality exists, but didn't see class identity as the only source. He emphasized status, prestige, and power, meaning that inequality operates on multiple levels, not just economics. And I think we definitely see that, right? It's not just, well, these are the social economic classes, but you can see how those power dynamics aren't just it's not just about money, right? We see it in all systems and in all levels. Um, and so although economics is just the easiest kind of way to see the divide, that's not the only place in which it occurs. Um, And I think I already did my soapbox about how it occurs in social work as well. Okay. I won't go on the soapbox anymore. But I was disappointed. I am disappointed because sometimes social workers, I'm like, we're social workers. How are we like still contributing to this? So it does perplex me. But it just shows how much embedded it is in society and culture that it even is very evident in social work. And I don't think we're doing a good job at like keeping it away. I think that it is very prevalent and we just kind of, kind of almost, we almost are like, well, we're social workers and we're social justice. So, like it's not happening with us, but it very much is. Rohan, go ahead.
I know we're trying to finish by 7 o'clock, so I'll make this. See, so if you don't want a fully in-depth answer, it's okay. So as you're talking, there are two things I want to ask. So as I told you, I went to seminary once, and one of my professors told me, you're going to school, educating to become ministers. You are, with all this money you're spending, you are supposed to correct, motivate, empower, and use your degree. And she always drilled that into us. You're spending all this money. People cannot be in your church having wrong beliefs. So my question to you is this. We're spending all this money to become social workers. So talk about the macro. All these injustices. Am I empowered? Am I compelled? Do you expect me to be going around correcting or addressing injustices I see maybe on Facebook, maybe in my family? One of my professor in my psychology or religion class, he was adamant that you should not use corporal punishment, and he says if you see your family member hit a kid, you're supposed to stand up to them. You're going. I'm educating you on the problem of it. You're supposed to. So for you as social workers, when I see injustice on Facebook and wherever, should I be these should I be speaking out against it? And that's the first part. And the second part is, and I think you were going to it just now. I'm a liberal, so a lot of these stuff we talk about are in line with me. But there are conservative people too who are not for this. So I'm assuming there's conservative social workers.
Mhm.
So how do I relate? So I was when I was going to orientation and we're talking about all these liberal policies, I was like sitting there wondering, I wonder if there's a conservative in the room. How they're feeling? Are they feeling judgment? Do they feel being judged and do they feel being attacked? I've always pondered that. Even when my class or my professor, he just insults Trump for 3 hours. I wonder, is there a Trump support in the class? I wonder how they're feeling. So my second part is, if some social worker, because of their valid political views, don't embrace social justice, what should I do? Hope that makes sense. So those are two parts. Should I be going around, maybe the same question, should I going around advocating and speaking up when I see injustice everywhere, even on Facebook? And how do I deal with someone who, because of their political belief, which is perfectly valid, maybe not embrace these social justice? I think you were getting there in your last part. Hope that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah, it makes perfect sense, especially uh in this climate for sure. So what I would say is that I would agree with, I think you were saying the I don't know if it was your professor or yeah. Um you are getting a degree. So we do want you to have the ability to critically analyze these things, right? We push social justice because that is part of our values. So we do expect you to be able to have those critical analysis when it comes to your job, when it comes to things that you're seeing at your job. But how you express that is going to be personal and individual, right? So our job is to definitely make sure you have those knowledge, the skills, and ability. Like we want to make sure you are equipped, but how you express that is you're going to find very like it's a whole like range of social workers. So you'll have people that are more outgoing, right? That will have those debates, that will have those discussions. Um, or you may have people that are doing a lot of the macro work, right? They are protesting. They are going to their politicians and sponsoring bills. They are speaking out on their social media. They might have podcasts. They might have different ways. And so I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. I personally do not debate people on Facebook. I normally like just don't, because for me, my mental capacity cannot. I cannot debate with you on social media. However, it is up to you, and that's, I think, what I was when I talk about the code of ethics, I always talk about there's a principle and then there's preference, right? So there are things that we have to do, like we're mandated reporters, right? We can't get around that. We're not necessarily mandated advocators, right? So we're going to advocate, right? No, seriously, we're going to advocate, but it's just going to look different on different levels, right? So it may look like I just am checking my agency every time I see something that doesn't align with values that they say they uphold, right? Because a lot of the organizations we work for say that they are for social justice, but then the policies don't match, right? So I might be having conversations. I might not be having conversations so they fire me, but I might be having those, building those relationships so that I can see, like, why are we doing this? How can we be different, right? But then you do have your soldier social workers. These are my social workers. I When I teach for the exam, I always talk about those that love to confront. They confront everything. And that's okay too, right? So that's how you express it. So I would say there's no right or wrong. I'm a very, like, when I grew up and just now, I am a very, I don't like to have be in the spotlight. I don't like a whole lot of attention. So I probably would never really go back and forth on social media just because that's just not in my personality to do that. So I don't think it's a right or wrong. And I think this is kind of where you'll see where you fit, like what part of it you fit. But the most important thing is that if somebody asks you a question, you're able you know what I mean? You have that ability. Now, whether you decide to or not, how you decide to, um, is definitely, I would say, up to you. The code of ethics, definitely, we have some non-negotiables, right? We have things that we should be standing up for. And you can pick and decide. Like, even for the social work exam, like the advocacy around it, there were ways to participate that were almost like silent ways, like not loud, but I was emailing my politicians. I was sending them, hey, I need you to approve this bill because of this and this and this. This is the harm it's causing. This is, you know what I mean? So there's ways to do it without it being um, loud, but you can still advocate for those things. And that's going to be something that you can also kind of explore as you're going through the program, right? And you can get to see like how your professors do it. Like, how do they show up? How do they advocate? And you'll see that a lot of CEU workshops are about how, because people are still trying to figure it out. Like, look, I got a lot of things going on in my life. I'm just trying to like survive at this point. So, what do we do? How do we really have that action oriented? I think Sharp does a good job of just talking about, like, are you going to be a disruptor? Or are you going to just go with the status quo? I think does a good job at talking about that. And I think that's just a question you'll continue to have as you move through social work. Like, what role am I going to have and how am I going to express it? Sarah says, I find it also depends on your relationship with the person. Yeah. Will I correct a random person online? Probably not. Will I engage a family member I'm otherwise close with? and have good discussions with. Yeah, right. So it's all about timing. It's all about the people. I personally do not feel pressured, but I also reflect. I have a lot of self-reflection moments because I am more on the quiet side when it comes to things. I do disengage a lot because it's just be a lot. It'd be a lot going on, and I'd be overwhelmed mentally with everything going on. And so those are conversations I might have with other social workers. Like, well, what are you doing? How are you feeling about what's going on? Like, how can we partner together? Or sometimes just venting to each other is helpful, and is a way to just be able to hold space with each other. So um, I don't think it is one or the other. I think it's just like we are all going to be in a within a range of things. And it's really personal. Like, well, hey, I think I need to step it up. Like, I think I need to do a little bit more. This is what I'm going to commit to. Like, I'm going to commit to doing this. Um, but I think it's a question that we all kind of grapple with. This is why I want to go into macro to develop the know-how in navigating leadership spaces, absolutely, where I can make changes in large institutions to be more ethical. When I tell you the amount of knowledge that I lacked when it came to that advocacy for the social work exam, like I learned a lot. Um, I learned a lot about like different ways that you can advocate. So I think absolutely, Ashley, that we need more education on like how do we do like how can I in my position at where I work, or how can I where I am, how can I do more, or what does that look like, you know? So absolutely. So no, that was perfect. That was a great conversation. Um and I think it's so important when it comes to social structures and just everything that is happening. The other thing you have to kind of think about it when you think about human behavior, some other things that come up that really aren't accounted for, I would say, in some of the things we talked about so far are um, we've had like pandemics, right? We've had like historical things happening. We also have social media that has changed kind of how we advocate and kind of movements that are happening. We also have, uh, and when I'm thinking of these things, I'm thinking about human behavior. Like when we see people that are behaving a certain way, how are these things impacting them? When we talk about um, Black Lives Matter movement, everything that happened during COVID with George Floyd, you know, how that kind of happened, right? Um, I think that also is a science all in itself. And I know there's a lot of articles about those things. Um, Generational differences also play a part in human behavior too, right? Because I just had a workshop on different generations. They're trying to help us teach class, y'all. They really are because we old and we trying to figure out how to teach for in this new age. We are. It's like we can't just lecture because people don't want to do that. They want to participate. They want to have something relevant, right? Um, and how does all of these things, different generations, different events, different movements, different technology, how does that all impact human behavior, right? Um, it does. And so it's a lot of factors. It's a lot of factors. Um, Talking about how with the digital age and the ability to interact together, the decline that we've seen with problem solving, right? How does that impact crime, right? Because it used to be we've always had guns. You see all the Westerns, they always had guns. So I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying like the escalation or the de-escal, like the lack of de-escalation. Um, we were just talking about my husband, me and I were talking about how the barber, he was shot over a parking space. A parking space. The man shot like three people over this parking space, right? So it's like, what is happening? Like, can you just punch people? Can we just like what is happening with our emotional regulation? It's like it's not there at all. What is happening? And so how do these different things impact that, right? Um, is it just this is what happened in their childhood, or are there other factors are contributing to that lack of problem solving or lack of conflict resolution? So you'll see a lot of information out there about those types of things. And I definitely would, you know, encourage you. And my hope is that we can all share resources about different podcasts and different things to be able to like keep up with the trends on these different things, because it does impact for sure. Just a side note, I did reach out to my old professor. His name is Dr. Kevin Daniels. And he, I just have to see when, but he said he's absolutely willing to talk about personality development, is what he said it's called. I called it astrology, but he said it's personality development. So he's going to talk about that. Um, and then we're going to start having some guest speakers come to class too. So I just have to schedule that. So I'm excited about that. But just different things that when you think about human behavior, you want to think about this. And that's really the hope, right? Is that when you move into your assessment stage, that you're thinking about this, even the macro work, right? You're developing relationships with people, how they express themselves or how they advocate for themselves could also, all of these things could impact that as well. Um, and so no matter what job you're in, being able to see things from a holistic lens and being able to account for more than just kind of one way, is really what we're wanting you to come away with, that critical lens, that critical analysis, to be able to look at your clients, um, and be able to account for multiple things that may be occurring, and thus being able to have interventions that really fit what they are experiencing, is definitely the hope. So even though in this class we'll touch a little bit on intervention, but it's more like about the why behind the intervention. And then in your other classes, you'll get the what. Like you'll get narrative therapy. This is how you do it, right? You'll get those techniques. But this class is really teaching you like why those techniques even matter, and kind of why they work and how they work, because of this kind of fundamental belief. Well, I thought that was a great conversation. How you feeling? Good. Okay, thumbs up. Yay. Oh, explosion of thumbs. Great. Um, okay. So any feelings about the direction of the class? Is anyone feeling stressed because of my class? Now, if you're feeling stressed because of your other classes, I can't really control that. But I want to make sure that you're not feeling stressed off of this class. Okay. I know it's a lot of changes, but when I change things, it's normally for your good and not for like, you know, it's due sooner than you thought. So it's normally pushing it back so you get more room. Least stressful. Yes. Feel free to keep changing deadlines. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes. Oh, yes, yes. Your empirical assignment, yep, due 10/11. And it can be in a informal format. Bullet points, I'm not looking for formatting, more of just the information, however you want to communicate it. It's not going to be strict because you have these papers coming up. So I'm like, I don't want to, no need to be no strict. I think the paper is a less stressful, but splitting it up into chunks. Yeah. Yep. It'll be chunks of it for sure. Okay, great. Well, I will not see you next week. Oh, this discussion post is due tonight if you haven't submitted. Yes. About the African centered theory. Yes, don't forget about that. African centered theory. Jot down some thoughts, 1 to 2 paragraphs, nothing long. Nothing long. Okay, just want to see what you thought about the article. Um, yes, perfect. I forgot about that. So yes, thank you for reminding everybody about that. No class next week. No class on the 30th. So you can go trick or treating. Site. If you want to, you can. um, yep, see you in 2 weeks.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye. It was nice meeting your
Bye.
son.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Every week he wants to talk to y'all.